Around the time of the release of Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin, I posted a sarcastic and crude response video to the long overdue acknowledgement that the legacy media ignored and even assisted in covering up the obvious decline of President Biden's mental state.
Pablo el Molinero, the honest reportero, crazy güero vaquero, straight shooter caballero.
Mr. Tapper, may I call you Jake? When you went on the publicity tour and promotion of your book, I was genuinely surprised that you apparently didn't see how obvious it was that the press has always been on a holy mission to defeat and destroy Donald Trump. As far as I know, the most challenging interview you did was with Megyn Kelly. Her questions were tough and fair. You seemed sincerely nonplussed at the degree of blame which she aimed at the press and even you personally. Your final admission was that Fox News got it right and we got it wrong. But I have to point out that Megyn Kelly, in my opinion, only scratched the surface. She limited her questioning to the content of your book and did not pursue the myriads of blatant examples where CNN and others were seemingly making an all-out effort to help the Biden campaign. You may consider it unfair that I hang what I am about to say on you, but you clearly see yourself as the honest reporter and have even acknowledged that you have become the avatar for this criticism. I feel it's justified because we're talking about your network and all the other media that is simpatico with your network's position. Honestly, you were my first choice for this commentary even before your book came out. In order to back up my assertion, I am going to refer to what I consider a truly blatant example of intentional collusion by the United States government and the mainstream media. The Hunter Biden laptop story. I'll begin with facts not in dispute. Sometime before the 2020 election, the Republican side announced the existence of a personal laptop that Hunter had left for repair at a shop in Delaware and forgotten to pick up. The computer allegedly had thousands of personal photos and documents, many of which were released to the public. Also not in dispute is that a letter was signed by 51 former intelligence personnel who said the laptop demonstrated all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation and warned all of the media should be aware that something like this was very likely to come out. In a presidential debate with Donald Trump, Joe Biden said unambiguously that the intelligence community said the laptop was Russian disinformation. A fact that could be in dispute, but is widely believed anyway, was that the laptop was instrumental to the outcome of the 2020 presidential race. I shall return to this part of the story, but for the moment, I shall give you some leeway. I believe that any good reporter had the right and even the duty to challenge the initial claims made about the laptop. Instead, let's jump forward to Hunter's 2024 trial for lying on a federal gun permit request. In that trial, the U.S. attorney prosecuting the case, David Weiss, introduced the laptop into evidence in order to make the case against Hunter Biden. You have to understand, we're talking about the laptop, the same one that very possibly swayed the election in favor of Joe Biden. To those on the other side of the controversy, this was atomic, and you guys didn't even blink when it was introduced. CBS had basically confirmed the authenticity of the contents of the copies in 2022, a fact which I don't think was ever mentioned by CNN. But here was the original, which the government had had in its possession the whole time. Do you still not get it? What was Nixon's crime? I always thought it was because he used government resources to cover up a break-in and thus guarantee his election victory. What the fuck do you think happened here? The FBI had the laptop all the time. They knew it was real. Did you bother to ask your sources where the laptop was all that time? Did you show the slightest indignation at having been used by the government in order to help the Biden campaign? Do you not even recognize from this 30,000-foot viewpoint that that is exactly what happened? Because that is what everyone else on the other side saw, and it precisely fit the same pattern that defined what you finally admitted to in Original Sin. God damn it, Jake. It's what everyone saw since the beginning of the Trump phenomenon. Just for your information, Hunter's trial was a goddamn joke. No one gets charged for lying on that particular government form. I believe the technical term on how that charge is typically used is called leverage. Hunter had just gotten away with murder on the tax evasion charge the year before because, in spite of being warned by whistleblowers of the crime and the impending deadline, they allowed the statute of limitations to expire. This was a goddamn cover-up. But the press was like, oh, this is very serious. Oh, look there's Hunter. Oh, Hunter. Oh, Hunter. Everyone knows you can't lie on a gun permit form. This proves it. No one is above the law, not even the president's own son. You may have reported the facts of what happened, but this is what everyone else saw. One stupid sheet of paper. Personally, I don't think that anyone actually believed there was even a chance in hell that a Delaware jury would have ever convicted Hunter Biden of that nonsense. And since I'm ranting, come on, Jake. Those 3 trials in New York were absolute horseshit. Tish made those laws up. I hope that they are all appealed because none of them will stand up to judicial scrutiny. Jake, 34 felonies based on a novel judicial theory that they made up for Trump based on an uncharged federal campaign law that was at worst a misdemeanor. I don't give a flying fuck that what you reported was technically a fact. Those charges were a joke, and you have to at least acknowledge the effect it had on Trump supporters. Back to the pre-election story of the laptop. Didn't it ever bother you that the Bidens were never even offered the opportunity to deny the laptop was real? No one asked. I heard you say more than once that there was no evidence that Joe Biden was in any way involved in his son's business. Jake, there was a goddamn treasure trove of evidence. Smoking gun, maybe not, but a veritable Mount Everest of evidence that would at least merit an investigation. Did anyone ever ask Hunter who the big guy was? Did CNN ever bother to interview Hunter's former business partner, Tony Bobulinski? He gave his cell phones and computer to the FBI, offered to testify, and they never even contacted him to follow up on what he said. Didn't that raise either one of your considerable eyebrows? His allegations were pretty damning, and if untrue, almost certainly legally actionable. Did CNN make any serious effort to follow up on any of the accusations made by the Trump team related to Hunter Biden? To be fair, CNN never really followed up on the accusations against Trump. You all just accepted it on face value. Again, you have to see the effect this had on Trump voters. Why does that matter so much? Do you remember January 6th? I'm not going to relitigate whether or not votes were stolen. For the sake of argument, I am willing to concede that based purely on the number of votes, Trump lost. But you, Jake Tapper, CNN, and others have never even recognized the credence that your cumulative history of covering the president gave to his allegations that the election was stolen. Sam Harris said the press were justified in their behavior because Trump was such an existential threat to democracy that we had to be saved from ourselves. I'm pretty sure that was the prevailing attitude in the government and the press. It was not a giant leap for Trump supporters to believe that, given what you've already proved you were willing to do, someone might rig the vote with the blessing of you all. You guys were at least as culpable for what happened on January 6th as Trump was. Let me repeat what I just said. The government and the press, through its repeated collective campaign to discredit Donald Trump, contributed, in the view of millions of Trump supporters, to the belief that they would do anything to prevent his reelection, including rig the vote. That gave fuel to the president's claim that the election was stolen, which led to the protest on January 6th and resulted in a riot and attack on the United States Capitol. Jake, the laptop is hardly the only example of what I'm talking about. Perhaps I shall go into more at a later date. I usually like to pepper my analyses with some inappropriate humor, a few zingers, and sincere cruelty. But this had to be said. How can anyone trust you if you really can't see what happened? Saying that Fox was right and you were wrong isn't enough. Please, go back on Megyn Kelly's show, or just call her on the phone and discuss what the term rigged means. Do I need an apology from you? Not necessarily. That's entirely up to you. Original Sin was a good start as far as it went. As far as the rest goes, you just have to acknowledge that it happened. Because it did. This is Pablo El Molinero.